The call came at 3 in the morning, the kind of call that makes your stomach drop before you even answer. Marcus Cole sat up in his narrow bed inside the converted garage he called home, his oil-stained fingers fumbling for the phone on the crate beside his mattress. The voice on the other end belonged to Donovan Chains Patterson, the club's sergeant-at-arms, and his words were clipped, urgent. Victor's been arrested. They got him at the Nevada border. Bail's set at $250,000. Marcus felt the air leave his lungs. Victor Reyes, the president of the Thunder Knights Motorcycle Club, the man who had pulled Marcus out of the gutter 6 years ago when he was nothing but a strung-out 23-year-old with more regrets than reasons to live. Victor had given him a wrench, a purpose, and something Marcus had never known before: family. "How much do we have in the emergency fund?" Marcus asked, already knowing the answer would hurt. 32,000, Chains replied. "Maybe 40 if we squeeze every brother." "It ain't enough, Cole. Not even close." Marcus pressed his palm against his forehead, thinking. The garage where he worked, legitimately now, fixing bikes and classic cars for wealthy collectors in the hills above Los Angeles, paid well enough to keep him fed and housed. But he had nothing saved. Every spare dollar went back to the club, to the youth outreach program Victor had started 3 years ago, teaching troubled kids how to work on engines instead of stealing them. "What are the charges?" Marcus asked. Chains hesitated. That hesitation told Marcus everything. "They're saying trafficking," Chains finally said. "Evidence they claim they found in his saddlebags. But we both know Victor. We know what he is and what he isn't. Someone planted that evidence. Someone with a badge, or someone who paid someone with a badge." Marcus closed his eyes. Victor Reyes had spent the last decade cleaning up the club's reputation, transitioning from the chaos of their outlaw past into something different, something meaningful. They still wore the leather, still rode in formation, still looked like the kind of men mothers warned their daughters about. But beneath the surface, they had become protectors, not predators. They escorted vulnerable children to school when their home situations made the walk dangerous. They stood guard at women's shelters. They raised money for veteran suicide prevention. Victor had transformed them, and now someone was trying to destroy everything he had built. "I'll figure something out," Marcus said into the phone. "Give me until tomorrow night." He ended the call and sat in the darkness of his garage apartment, listening to the distant sound of traffic on the Pacific Coast Highway and the closer sound of his own heartbeat, steady and determined. Marcus Cole was not a man who believed in miracles. He believed in wrenches and engines, in the honest sweat of labor, in the brotherhood that came from riding side by side through both sunshine and storm. But he also believed in something Victor had taught him years ago. When your family needs you, you find a way. You always find a way. The morning light crept through the gaps in the garage door, painting stripes across the concrete floor and the vintage Indian motorcycle Marcus had been restoring for a client. That client was Sebastian Whitmore, a tech billionaire who collected rare bikes the way other men collected watches. Sebastian had more money than God and less personality than a dial tone, but he paid on time and never questioned Marcus's rates. Marcus picked up his phone again and scrolled through his contacts until he found a name he hadn't called in over a year. Eleanor Blackwood, the woman who had started as a customer and become something complicated, something Marcus had deliberately walked away from because men like him didn't end up with women like her. Eleanor was old money, philanthropist circles, charity galas with champagne that cost more than Marcus's monthly rent. She had come to him 2 years ago wanting her late father's vintage Harley restored, a 1948 panhead that had been sitting in her family's Connecticut estate gathering dust for decades. Marcus had spent 4 months bringing that machine back to life, and somewhere in those months, something had sparked between them. Late nights in the garage, her sitting on an overturned crate in designer clothes that cost more than his truck, asking questions about carburetors and timing chains, like she genuinely cared about the answers. She had kissed him once, the night he finished the restoration, and he had kissed her back before pulling away and telling her the truth, that he was a former Hell's Angel, that he had done things he couldn't undo, that she deserved someone whose hands weren't stained with more than engine grease. Eleanor had called him a coward. She had called him several other things too, and then she had her driver load the panhead into a trailer and she had driven out of his life. Now Marcus stared at her number, his thumb hovering over the call button. He knew things about Eleanor's world, about the circles she moved in. He knew that tonight was the Whitmore Foundation Gala, the biggest charity event of the season, where billionaires gathered to write checks and congratulate each other on their generosity. Sebastian Whitmore himself would be there, along with every mover and shaker in Southern California high society. Marcus also knew something else. He knew that Eleanor had been trying to secure funding for a legal defense initiative, a nonprofit that provided representation for people who had been wrongly accused, people who couldn't afford the lawyers necessary to prove their innocence. She had mentioned it during one of those late garage nights, her voice passionate in a way that made Marcus understand she wasn't just another rich woman playing at charity. He pressed the button and listened to the phone ring. Eleanor's voice was cool when she answered. Marcus Cole. I thought you deleted my number. I thought about it, Marcus admitted, but I needed to remember why I walked away. And why was that? She asked, her tone sharp. Because you scared me, Marcus said honestly. Because you made me want things I had no right to want. Silence stretched across the line. When Eleanor spoke again, her voice had softened just slightly. What do you want, Marcus? I need your help, he said. And I know I have no right to ask. He told her about Victor, about the charges that made no sense, about the bail that might as well have been $1 million for all the club could raise. He told her about the man who had saved his life, who had given him purpose, who had spent a decade proving that people could change if someone believed in them hard enough. Eleanor listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. There's nothing I can do about bail, she finally said. I don't have that kind of liquid capital, and my family's trust has restrictions that would make your head spin. Marcus felt his hope deflating like a punctured tire. But, Eleanor continued, there might be another way. The gala tonight, the Whitmore Foundation event. Harrison Drake will be there. The name meant nothing to Marcus, and he said so. Harrison Drake, Eleanor explained, runs the largest bail bond operation on the West Coast. But he's not the kind of bondsman you find in a strip mall next to a pawn shop. He caters to a very specific clientele, people who need discretion and have the connections to warrant his attention. He's been trying to get into legitimate philanthropy circles for years, trying to clean up his image. He'll be at the gala because Sebastian invited him, and Sebastian invited him because Drake made a very generous donation to the foundation. Marcus processed this information, trying to see where it led. I need to talk to him, Marcus said. I need to convince him to post Victor's bail. Eleanor laughed, but there was no humor in it. Marcus, you can't just walk into the Whitmore Gala and approach Harrison Drake. Security alone would have you face down on the marble floor before you got within 50 feet of him. And even if you could get close, why would he listen to you? What could you possibly offer him? Marcus thought about this. He thought about his skills, about the things he knew how to do, about the currency he carried that wasn't measured in dollars. His cars, Marcus said slowly. Drake collects classic muscle cars, doesn't he? I remember Sebastian mentioning it once. Eleanor paused. How did you know that? Because Sebastian tried to hire me to restore a 1969 Camaro ZL1 for him, to give to Drake as a gift for some business deal. I turned him down because the car was in too rough a shape, and Sebastian wanted it done in 2 weeks. But I remember Sebastian talking about Drake's collection, about how the man was obsessed with finding authentic restoration work. And you think you can use that? Eleanor asked. I think I can offer him something he can't buy anywhere else, Marcus replied. My expertise, my time. A full restoration of any car in his collection, free of charge. All he has to do is post Victor's bail. Eleanor was quiet for so long that Marcus thought the call had dropped. It might work, she finally said, but there's a problem. You still can't get into the gala. These events have guest lists vetted weeks in advance, background checks, the whole 9 yards. Marcus knew what he had to say next, knew it would cost him something he couldn't quite name. I could get in, he said carefully, if I came as your guest. The silence that followed was different this time. Heavier. You want me to bring you to the Whitmore Gala, Eleanor said slowly, as my date. I'm not asking for a date, Marcus clarified. I'm asking for access. You get me through the door, I talk to Drake, and then I'm out of your life again, for good this time, if that's what you want. Eleanor's laugh this time had something bitter in it. You're asking me to help you save the man who turned you into who you are, the man who is the reason you walked away from me. That's not, Marcus started, but Eleanor cut him off. Don't, she said. Don't explain. Don't justify. I'll help you, Marcus, not because I owe you anything, and not because I've forgotten what it felt like when you told me we couldn't work. I'll help you because I know what it's like to love someone who shaped you, someone whose absence would leave a hole nothing else could fill. My father was that person for me, and when he was dying, I would have done anything, traded anything, to give him more time. Thank you, Marcus said, and he meant it with every fiber of his being. The gala starts at 8, Eleanor said. I'll send a car to pick you up at 6. You'll need a tuxedo. I don't own a tuxedo. I'll have one sent over. What's your size? Marcus told her, feeling the strangeness of this conversation, the surreal quality of planning formal wear with a woman he had pushed away because he thought he wasn't good enough for her. And Marcus, Eleanor added before ending the call, for what it's worth, you were wrong. About us. About what you deserved. You were wrong about all of it. The line went dead, and Marcus sat in his garage, surrounded by the tools and machines that had given his life meaning, wondering if Eleanor was right, wondering if he had made a mistake he couldn't unmake. But there was no time for regret now. Victor was sitting in a cell somewhere, waiting for someone to believe in him the way he had believed in so many others. Marcus showered for the first time in 3 days, scrubbing the grease from beneath his fingernails until his hands were raw. He trimmed his beard, cut his hair with the same clippers he used on clients' dogs when they wandered into the garage. By the time the town car arrived at 6, carrying a garment bag with a tuxedo that fit better than anything Marcus had ever worn, he almost didn't recognize the man looking back at him from the cracked mirror on his bathroom wall. He looked like someone who belonged in Eleanor's world. The thought made him uncomfortable, but he pushed it down. Tonight wasn't about him. Tonight was about Victor, about loyalty, about the debt Marcus could never fully repay. The driver didn't speak during the hour-long drive to the Whitmore estate in Bel Air. Marcus watched the neighborhoods change through the tinted window, watched the houses grow larger and the lawns more manicured until they reached the kind of wealth that didn't need to announce itself, the kind that simply existed like a force of nature. Eleanor was waiting at the entrance, and the sight of her stopped Marcus's breath in his chest. She wore a silver gown that caught the light like mercury, her dark hair pinned up in a way that made her neck look impossibly elegant. She was beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with money or fashion, and everything to do with the way she carried herself, like a woman who knew exactly who she was and had stopped apologizing for it long ago. You clean up well, she said, her eyes traveling over the tuxedo with approval. You look incredible, Marcus replied, because it was the truth, and because he was done lying about things that mattered. Eleanor smiled, but there was something guarded behind it. Let's go save your brother, she said. She took his arm, and together they walked through the massive doors into a world Marcus had spent his entire life on the outside of, looking in. Check if you are already subscribed to this channel, because every story we share here is proof that loyalty isn't just a word, it's an action. Subscribe now and witness how far true brotherhood can reach. The Whitmore Estate's grand ballroom was a cathedral of excess, crystal chandeliers cascading from ceilings 40 feet high, their light fracturing into rainbows across marble floors polished to mirror brightness. Everywhere Marcus looked, he saw wealth performing itself, men in tuxedos that cost more than his truck, women draped in diamonds that could have fed his old neighborhood for a year. Waiters in white gloves circulated with champagne flutes and caviar, their faces professionally blank, trained to be invisible to the people they served. Marcus felt every eye in the room tracking him as he entered with Eleanor. He didn't belong here, and everyone knew it. His tuxedo was perfect, his shoes were shined, but there was something in the way he moved, something in the way his eyes constantly scanned for exits and threats, that marked him as other. These people had been raised to glide. Marcus had been raised to survive. Relax, Eleanor murmured, her hand tightening on his arm. "You look like you're about to either fight someone or run." "Still deciding which," Marcus admitted. Eleanor laughed, a genuine sound that drew approving glances from nearby guests. She was magnificent here, he realized, in her element in a way that made him understand the gulf between them even more clearly. She greeted people by name, made small talk that somehow managed to be both warm and meaningless, navigated the social currents with the ease of a woman who had been doing this since childhood. "Drake usually holds court near the East Terrace," Eleanor whispered as they moved through the crowd. "He likes to have his back to the wall and a clear view of everyone who matters." Old habits. "What was he before the bail bonds business?" Marcus asked. "Nobody knows for certain," Eleanor replied. "The rumors range from hedge fund manager to intelligence operative. What everyone agrees on is that he made his money in ways nobody asks too many questions about, and now he's trying to buy his way into respectability." They passed through a pair of French doors onto a terrace overlooking gardens that could have contained Marcus's entire neighborhood. And there, surrounded by a small cluster of men who radiated the quiet confidence of extreme wealth, stood Harrison Drake. He was smaller than Marcus had expected, a compact man in his 60s with silver hair swept back from a face that might have been handsome 30 years ago. His eyes were what caught Marcus's attention, pale gray and sharp as broken glass, the eyes of a man who had seen things and done things and would never apologize for any of it. "Wait here," Eleanor said. "Let me make the introduction." Marcus watched as she approached Drake's circle, watched the way the older man's expression shifted from polite interest to genuine warmth when he saw her. They exchanged cheek kisses, murmured words Marcus couldn't hear, and then Eleanor was gesturing toward him, and Drake's gray eyes were fixed on Marcus with an intensity that made him feel like a specimen under a microscope. Drake broke away from his group and approached, his gait the measured stride of a man who never hurried, because the world waited for him, not the other way around. "So you're the mechanic," Drake said. His voice was surprisingly soft, almost musical. "Eleanor tells me you have a proposition." Marcus met his gaze directly. "I hear you collect muscle cars. Classic American iron." Drake's lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. "I have a few pieces that interest me, yes." "I restore them," Marcus said. "Not the assembly line work you get from most shops. I mean real restoration. Period-correct parts sourced from original suppliers, factory-original paint matched to the exact formula, machine work done by hand the way it was done when these cars first rolled off the line. I'm the best at what I do, and I don't say that to boast. I say it because it's true." Drake studied him for a long moment. "And what do you want in exchange for this remarkable expertise?" "You run a bail bonds operation," Marcus said, "the biggest on the West Coast. I need you to post bail for a man named Victor Reyes, currently being held in Nevada on charges that are complete fabrications." Drake's expression didn't change, but something flickered in those pale eyes. "Victor Reyes, the motorcycle club president. I read about his arrest." "Then you know the charges don't make sense," Marcus said. "Victor has spent the last 10 years turning the Thunder Knights into a force for good. Youth outreach, veteran support, community protection. He's the reason I'm standing here today instead of rotting in a prison cell or dead in a ditch somewhere. The evidence against him was planted. I know it. Everyone who knows him knows it. But knowing isn't enough when bail is set at $250,000 and the only people who believe in him are a bunch of bikers without that kind of money." Drake was silent for a long time. Around them, the party continued, laughter and music and the clink of crystal glasses, but Marcus was aware only of the man in front of him and the weight of Victor's freedom hanging in the balance. "You're asking me to take a significant financial risk," Drake finally said. "$250,000 is not pocket change, even for me, and your friend's case does not look good on paper." "I'm not asking you to take a risk," Marcus replied. "I'm offering you a trade. My time, my expertise in exchange for your faith. Victor will show up for every court date. He'll fight these charges and he'll be exonerated because he's innocent. And when that happens, you get your money back plus my services for as long as it takes to restore any vehicle in your collection that you choose." Drake's eyes narrowed. "Any vehicle?" Marcus nodded. I saw your collection featured in Classic Car magazine 3 years ago. You have a 1970 Plymouth Superbird that's been badly restored by someone who didn't know what they were doing. The wing is wrong, the nose cone is fiberglass when it should be steel, and the paint is 3 shades off the original limelight green. I could make that car what it was meant to be. I could make it perfect. Something shifted in Drake's expression, a crack in the polished facade. That car was my father's, he said quietly. He bought it new off the lot in 1970. He was a factory worker who saved for 3 years to afford it. I've been trying to find someone who could restore it properly for 15 years. I'm that someone, Marcus said. Get Victor out and the car is yours. Not a replica, not a facsimile. The real thing brought back to life. Drake looked at Marcus for a long moment, then turned to Eleanor. You vouch for him? He asked. With my reputation, Eleanor replied without hesitation. Marcus Cole is many things, but a liar isn't one of them. Drake nodded slowly. I'll need to make some calls. This isn't the kind of decision one makes at a cocktail party, but I'm interested. Give me until midnight and you'll have my answer. He extended his hand, and Marcus shook it, feeling the strength in the older man's grip, the quiet power of a man who had built empires with these hands. Don't disappear, Drake added. I'll find you when I've made my decision. He turned and walked away, leaving Marcus and Eleanor alone on the terrace under a sky scattered with stars. You did well, Eleanor said. Better than I expected. He hasn't said yes yet, Marcus replied. No, Eleanor agreed. But he hasn't said no. And with Harrison Drake, that's the same as maybe, which is more than most people ever get. They returned to the party, but Marcus couldn't focus on the glittering crowd around him. His mind was in Nevada, in a cell where Victor sat waiting, probably wondering if anyone remembered him, if anyone cared enough to fight for him the way he had fought for so many others. The hours crawled by like wounded animals. Marcus nursed a single glass of water while Eleanor worked the room, introducing him to people whose names and faces blurred together into a smear of privilege and pleasantry. A senator's wife wanted to know about his work, seemed genuinely fascinated when he described the process of rebuilding a vintage engine. A film producer asked if Marcus could restore a motorcycle for an upcoming movie set in the 1960s. A retired general, his chest heavy with medals even in civilian clothes, wanted to talk about the Thunder Knight's work with veterans and shook Marcus's hand with respect that felt unearned. These people don't know what you are, Marcus thought to himself. They see the tuxedo and the woman on your arm and they make assumptions. They don't know about the years you spent running with men who would have scared them senseless. They don't know about the things you did before Victor found you and showed you there was another way. But maybe that was the point. Maybe that was what Victor had been trying to teach him all along. That the past didn't have to define the future. That who you had been mattered less than who you were becoming. That redemption wasn't a destination but a journey, one step at a time, one good choice followed by another. At 11:45, Harrison Drake appeared at Marcus's elbow, silent as a ghost. Walk with me, Drake said. They moved through the crowd to a quiet corner of the ballroom, away from listening ears. I made my calls, Drake said. Your friend Victor Reyes has quite a reputation. The people I trust tell me he's the real thing, a man who walks what he talks. They also tell me the charges against him are suspicious at best, that there are powerful people who would benefit from seeing him destroyed. Marcus said nothing, waiting. I'm going to post his bail, Drake continued. $250,000, with your services as collateral. But I want something else, something more. Name it, Marcus said. I want you to find out who set him up, Drake said, his gray eyes hard as flint. I want you to expose them. Not with violence, not with the kind of justice your old club might have delivered. I want the truth, documented and irrefutable, the kind of truth that can stand up in court and destroy whoever did this. Why do you care? Marcus asked. You don't know Victor. You have nothing to gain from his vindication. Drake was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer than before. 30 years ago, I was in trouble. Different kind of trouble than your friend, but trouble nonetheless. A man I barely knew took a chance on me when nobody else would. He didn't ask for anything in return, didn't want anything except to see me become something better than what I was. I never got the chance to repay him. He passed away before I could. His face tightened. Your Victor reminds me of that man. Maybe this is my way of settling an old debt. Marcus extended his hand. You have a deal. Drake shook it. I'll have the paperwork processed tonight. Your friend should be released by morning. The relief that flooded through Marcus was so intense, he felt his knees weaken. Thank you, he managed to say. Don't thank me yet, Drake replied. You've got a car to restore and a conspiracy to unravel. The hard work is just beginning. He disappeared into the crowd, leaving Marcus standing alone in the corner of the ballroom, the weight of Victor's freedom finally lifting from his shoulders. Eleanor found him a few minutes later, her expression questioning. Well? She asked. He said yes, Marcus replied. Victor will be out by morning. Eleanor's smile was like the sunrise after a long, dark night. Then let's get out of here, she said. I think you've had enough of the wealthy and powerful for one evening. They walked out of the Whitmore estate together, past the valets and the town cars and the security guards who had nearly prevented this entire night from happening. The cool night air hit Marcus's face like absolution, clean and real after hours of perfumed artifice. The driver was waiting with Eleanor's car, but she waved him off. Let's walk, she said. There's a path through the gardens that leads to a lookout point over the city. I want to show you something. They walked in comfortable silence through hedgerows and flower beds, past fountains that sparkled in the moonlight, until they reached a stone balustrade overlooking the sprawling lights of Los Angeles below. I used to come here as a child, Eleanor said. When my father would drag me to these parties, I would sneak away and stand right here, looking at all those lights and wondering about the people living beneath them. All those stories happening simultaneously, all those lives intersecting and diverging, and none of them knowing or caring about the people up here in the hills with their champagne and their charity. Marcus stood beside her, looking out at the city that had tried so hard to destroy him before Victor and the club had given him a chance to build something different. You asked me once why I walked away, Marcus said quietly. From us. From what we could have been. I remember, Eleanor replied. It wasn't because I didn't want you, Marcus continued. It was because I did. Too much. I looked at you, and I saw everything I thought I could never have. Everything I thought I didn't deserve. I told myself I was being noble, protecting you from a past I couldn't erase. But the truth is I was just scared. Scared that you would see the real me and run. Scared that I would disappoint you the way I had disappointed everyone else. Eleanor turned to face him. And now? Now I understand something I didn't understand then, Marcus said. The man Victor helped me become, the man who walked into that ballroom tonight and made a deal with Harrison Drake, that man isn't pretending to be something he's not. He's not wearing a mask. He's just me. A different version of me, a better version, but still me. Eleanor reached out and touched his face, her fingers cool against his cheek. That's what I was trying to tell you, she whispered, that night in your garage. That's what I saw in you all along. She kissed him then, soft and certain, and Marcus kissed her back without pulling away, without making excuses, without running. He kissed her like a man who had finally stopped being afraid of his own capacity for love. When they broke apart, Eleanor was smiling. Your friend is getting out of jail tomorrow, she said, but tonight isn't over yet. Come home with me. Not like that, she added quickly, seeing his expression. I have a guest room with sheets that cost more than your motorcycle. You can have a real meal, a good night's sleep, and in the morning we'll figure out how to find whoever set Victor up. Why are you helping me? Marcus asked. After everything. Because you asked, Eleanor replied simply. Because you needed someone, and I was there. Isn't that what your brotherhood is all about? Being there when it matters? Marcus smiled for what felt like the first time in days. You might have made a good biker, Eleanor Blackwood. Don't let it go to your head, she replied. Now come on. My car is waiting, and I'm starving. They walked back through the gardens, hand in hand, and Marcus thought about Victor sitting in that cell, not knowing that help was on the way, not knowing that the family he had built was moving heaven and earth to bring him home. "Hold on, brother," Marcus thought. "We're coming." The morning light through Eleanor's guest room windows was softer than any light Marcus had ever woken to. The bed beneath him was too comfortable, the sheets too smooth, the silence too complete. For a moment, he didn't know where he was, didn't know what was real and what had been dreamed. Then memory returned, and with it the weight of everything that still needed to be done. He showered in a bathroom larger than his garage apartment, dressed in the clothes Eleanor had left outside his door, jeans and a simple button-down shirt that probably cost more than his monthly grocery budget. When he descended the curved staircase to Eleanor's kitchen, he found her already there, nursing a cup of coffee and scrolling through her phone. "Drake's people processed the bail paperwork 2 hours ago," she said without looking up. "Victor is being released as we speak. Chains and some of the brothers are driving out to pick him up." The relief was physical, a loosening in Marcus's chest that he hadn't even realized was there. "Now comes the hard part," Eleanor continued, "finding out who set him up and why." "I've been thinking about that," Marcus said, accepting the coffee she poured for him. Victor's arrest happened at the Nevada border. He was heading to a meeting with another club, trying to broker a peace between two factions that have been feuding for months. Someone knew his route, knew his timing, knew exactly where to plant the evidence and when to call the cops. Which means either someone in Victor's own club betrayed him or someone in one of the other factions set him up, Eleanor concluded. Or option 3, Marcus said. Someone outside the motorcycle world entirely, someone with resources and reach. Someone who has been waiting for the right moment to take Victor down. Who would want to hurt him that badly? Marcus thought about the enemies the Thunder Knights had made over the years. The landlords they had pressured to fix unsafe conditions in low-income housing. The dealers they had driven out of neighborhoods they protected. The politicians whose corruption they had exposed through their community organizing work. "We've stepped on a lot of toes," Marcus admitted. "Victor's philosophy has always been that we can't stay neutral. If there's injustice happening in our territory, we address it. That makes enemies." "Then we need to look at recent enemies," Eleanor said. "Anyone Victor crossed in the last 6 months, anyone who might have the resources to pull off something like this." "There's someone," Marcus said slowly. "A developer named Franklin West. He's been trying to buy up a whole neighborhood in East Los Angeles, pushing out families who have lived there for generations. Victor organized the residents, helped them fight back through legal channels. West has been blocked at every turn." Eleanor's eyes narrowed. "Franklin West. I know that name. He was at the gala last night, sitting at Sebastian's table." Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. "He was there? At the same party where I was begging Harrison Drake for help?" "Rich people's circles are small," Eleanor said. "West is relatively new money, made his fortune in commercial real estate, but he's been climbing the social ladder aggressively. Sebastian can't stand him, but West made a donation to the foundation large enough that he couldn't be excluded from the guest list." "If West is behind this," Marcus said, "he's got the resources. Money, connections, maybe even people on his payroll in law enforcement. But proving it won't be easy." "Nothing worth doing ever is," Eleanor replied. She set down her coffee cup with determination. "I have contacts in investigative journalism, people who owe me favors. Let me make some calls. Meanwhile, you should get back to your club. Victor will need to know what we've learned, and you'll need their help to dig deeper." Marcus nodded, but he hesitated before standing. "Eleanor," he said, "last night, on the terrace. That wasn't just adrenaline or gratitude, at least not for me." She looked at him for a long moment, something vulnerable flickering behind her composed expression. "I know," she said quietly. "I've been waiting 2 years to hear you say that. What happens now?" "Now we save Victor," Eleanor replied. "And then we figure out the rest. One crisis at a time." She walked him to the door, and they stood together on the threshold of her mansion, the morning sun warm on their faces. "I'll call you when I have something," she said. "And I'll answer," Marcus promised. "Every time." He walked down the long driveway to where a car was waiting to take him back to his garage, back to his life, back to the brotherhood that needed him now more than ever. The ride back to his neighborhood felt like traveling between worlds. The manicured lawns of Bel Air gave way to strip malls and apartment complexes, luxury cars replaced by work trucks and buses, the quiet money of the hills exchanged for the loud survival of the streets. But for the first time in his life, Marcus didn't feel like he was choosing one world over the other. He felt like he was bridging them, like the connection he had rebuilt with Eleanor was proof that the walls between lives could be broken down if you were willing to do the work. His garage was exactly as he had left it, cluttered and oil-stained and perfect. He changed out of Eleanor's borrowed clothes and into his own, work boots and jeans and the leather vest that marked him as Thunder Knights, the patch that said he belonged to something larger than himself. He was just finishing when he heard the rumble of engines outside, the familiar thunder of a motorcycle convoy approaching. He stepped out into the sunlight to see a dozen bikes pulling into the lot, and at the center of the formation, on the back of Chaines's Harley, sat Victor Reyes. Victor looked older than he had just a week ago, his face drawn and pale, his eyes carrying a weight that Marcus recognized from his own time in darkness. But when he swung off the bike and saw Marcus waiting, something in his expression lifted, and suddenly he looked like himself again, the man who had built a family from broken pieces and refused to let the world break them again. They embraced, and Marcus felt the tremor in Victor's shoulders, the barely contained emotion of a man who had spent days in a cell wondering if everything he had built was about to be destroyed. "They told me what you did," Victor said, his voice rough. "Drake, the gala, all of it. You went to war for me, brother." "Family is who shows up," Marcus replied, quoting Victor's own words back to him. "You taught me that." Victor nodded, his eyes bright with unshed tears. "Then let's go inside. We have work to do." In the garage, surrounded by half-finished motorcycles and the tools of Marcus's trade, Victor told them everything. The arrest had been textbook, almost rehearsed. The cops had known exactly where to look for the planted evidence, exactly what charges to file, exactly how to maximize the impact. Someone had planned this carefully, had designed it not just to put Victor in jail, but to destroy the club's reputation in the community they served. "It's West," Marcus said when Victor finished. "It has to be. He has the motive, the resources, and he was at the same party where I got help for your bail. He was probably watching, probably laughing at the thought of us scrambling." Victor's jaw tightened. Franklin West. I've been a thorn in his side for months. He's not used to people standing in his way. "So what do we do?" Chains asked. "Old days, we would have paid him a visit, made him understand the consequences of crossing the club." Victor shook his head. "That's exactly what he wants. He's waiting for us to retaliate, to prove that we're the outlaws everyone thinks we are. If we give him violence, he'll use it to destroy us completely. No, we fight this with truth. We expose him for what he is, and we do it through channels that can't be questioned." "Eleanor has contacts in journalism," Marcus offered. "She's making calls. If there's a paper trail connecting West to my arrest, her people will find it." Victor looked at Marcus with something like wonder. "Eleanor Blackwood, the woman you were too scared to love." "I'm done being scared," Marcus said simply. Victor smiled, and for a moment, despite everything, the garage felt like it had always felt. Like home, like family, like a place where broken men could become whole again. "Then we move forward," Victor said. "Together, the way we've always done." They spent the rest of the day planning, dividing tasks, reaching out to contacts throughout the community who might have information about West's operation. It was the kind of work that didn't make for exciting stories, phone calls and interviews and careful documentation, but it was the work that mattered, the work that could bring down empires if done right. As evening fell, Marcus stood alone in the garage, looking at the vintage Indian motorcycle he had been restoring before all of this began. Sebastian Whitmore's bike, still waiting for the final touches that would make it perfect. He thought about Drake's Superbird, waiting in some warehouse for Marcus to make good on his promise. He thought about Eleanor in her mansion, working her connections to help people she had never met. He thought about Victor, about the debt Marcus could never fully repay, about the way one act of faith could change everything. His phone buzzed. A text from Eleanor. Found something. Big. Call me. Marcus dialed immediately, his heart pounding. West has been buying up properties through shell companies, Eleanor said, her voice tight with excitement. My journalist contact traced the money. It's not just real estate. He's been paying off local officials, financing campaigns for judges who rule in his favor. And 3 months ago, he made a payment to a private investigation firm that specializes in what they call reputation management. Which means, Marcus prompted. Which means manufacturing evidence, Eleanor finished. Planting stories, setting up enemies for falls they never see coming. My contact is going to publish, but she needs more. She needs someone inside West's organization to confirm. We'll find someone, Marcus said. We'll find a way. I know you will, Eleanor replied, because that's what you do, what you've always done. They talked for a few more minutes, planning their next steps, and when Marcus finally ended the call, he stood in the darkness of his garage feeling something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. Real, honest hope. Victor was free. Eleanor was by his side. The truth was within reach. And Marcus Cole, the ex-Hell's Angel who had spent most of his life convinced he didn't deserve good things, was starting to believe that maybe, just maybe, redemption wasn't just a story people told themselves. Maybe it was real. Right now, I need you to pause. In this moment, if you feel what Marcus feels, the weight of loyalty, the power of someone fighting for the ones they love, leave a comment below with these words. Real family shows up when it matters. Let me see who believes in this kind of brotherhood. The next 3 days were a blur of activity, investigation, and careful movement through the shadows of Franklin West's empire. Marcus barely slept, running on coffee and determination, coordinating with Eleanor's journalist contacts while simultaneously fulfilling his obligations to the club and his legitimate work at the garage. Eleanor's investigator had provided them with a roadmap, names and dates and financial transactions that painted a picture of a man who had built his fortune on the backs of people he considered disposable. But the smoking gun remained elusive, the direct connection between West and Victor's arrest that would be irrefutable in court. The break came from an unexpected source. Marcus was at the garage putting the final touches on Sebastian Whitmore's Indian motorcycle when a woman appeared in the doorway. She was young, mid-20s perhaps, with the sharp-eyed look of someone who had learned early that the world was not to be trusted. Her clothes were expensive but worn, last season's fashion carefully maintained past its prime, the uniform of someone who had fallen from grace but hadn't yet admitted it. Are you Marcus Cole? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Depends on who's asking. My name is Jennifer Chen. I used to work for Franklin West. Her hands were trembling, Marcus noticed. Until last week, I was his executive assistant. Marcus set down his wrench and gave her his full attention. Why are you here, Jennifer? Because I know what he did to your friend, she said, and I can prove it. But first, I need your word that you'll protect me. West has resources, connections. If he finds out I've turned on him, he'll destroy me the way he tried to destroy Victor Reyes. Marcus studied her face, looking for signs of deception. He had spent enough years among liars to recognize the real thing when he saw it. This woman was terrified, genuinely terrified, and something in her desperation rang true. Come inside, Marcus said. Tell me everything. Jennifer's story unfolded over the next hour, a tale of small compromises that led to larger ones, of turning a blind eye to transactions that didn't add up, of slowly realizing that her employer was not the visionary businessman his public image suggested. I found the payments 3 months ago, she said, buried in accounts I wasn't supposed to have access to. Payments to the investigation firm, payments to someone in the Nevada State Police, payments to a lawyer who specializes in evidence fabrication. I didn't understand what it meant at first, not until I saw the news about Victor Reyes' arrest. Then all the pieces fit together. Why didn't you go to the authorities? Marcus asked. Because West owns the authorities. At least the ones that matter. Jennifer's voice was bitter. I watched him buy a judge last year. Literally watched the transaction happen, sitting at his desk, taking notes like it was a business meeting. The system is rigged. The only way to beat him is to go public, to make the truth so loud and undeniable that even his bought and paid for officials can't suppress it. What do you have? Marcus pressed. Documents? Recordings? Both. Jennifer reached into her bag and pulled out a flash drive. Everything. Every email, every transaction, every meeting where I took notes without him realizing what I was documenting. It's all here. Enough to bring Wes down and expose the people who helped him frame your friend. Marcus took the drive, feeling its weight in his palm. This was it. The key to Victor's vindication, the ammunition they needed to destroy a corrupt empire. But why bring this to me? Marcus asked. Why not go straight to Eleanor's journalist? Because journalists need sources they can trust, Jennifer replied. And right now, I'm a disgraced former employee who could be dismissed as holding a grudge. I need credibility. I need the people Wes tried to destroy to stand with me, to validate what I'm saying. That's why I'm here. Marcus considered this. It made sense. The kind of tactical thinking that suggested Jennifer was smarter than her circumstances had allowed her to be. I'll take this to Victor, Marcus said. He'll want to verify everything before we move forward. But if what you're saying is true, you'll have our full support. The Thunder Knights protect our own, and right now, you're as much one of us as anyone wearing the patch. Jennifer's eyes filled with tears. She quickly blinked away. Thank you, she whispered. I've been running for 3 days, sleeping in my car, not knowing who to trust. I didn't know if you would believe me. I believe you, Marcus said, because I know what West is capable of, and because I know what it feels like to have nowhere to turn. He gave her the address of a motel where Chains could arrange security, a place where she would be safe while they verified her information and planned their next moves. As she left, Marcus called Eleanor. We've got it, he said when she answered. Everything we need. He could hear the excitement in her voice as he explained, the relief and anticipation of a battle about to be won. She promised to coordinate with her journalist contact to set up a meeting where Jennifer could tell her story on the record with legal protection in place. This is going to work, Eleanor said. We're going to bring him down. Marcus wanted to believe her. He wanted to feel the victory that seemed so close he could taste it. But something nagged at him, a whisper of doubt that he couldn't quite silence. This had been too easy. Jennifer appearing out of nowhere, bringing exactly what they needed at exactly the right moment. It felt less like luck and more like choreography, like someone pulling strings they couldn't see. He pushed the doubt aside. There would be time for caution later. Right now, Victor's freedom hung in the balance, and they finally had the weapon to secure it. The meeting with the journalist was scheduled for the following evening, at a secure location Eleanor had arranged through her contacts. But the night before, Marcus received a visitor he had not expected. He was alone in the garage running through the documentation one more time when the door opened and Harrison Drake walked in. The older man looked different outside the gala setting, more real somehow, his expensive suit replaced by a simple jacket and slacks. But those gray eyes were the same, sharp and assessing, missing nothing. I heard about your progress, Drake said, his voice as soft as Marcus remembered. Jennifer Chen is a significant acquisition. How did you know about that? Marcus asked, immediately alert. I make it my business to know things. Drake walked slowly around the garage, examining the motorcycles with apparent interest. Franklin West has made enemies of many powerful people. I am one of them. When I learned what you were doing, I made sure to keep informed. Why? Marcus demanded. What's your stake in this? Drake turned to face him. My stake is justice. West destroyed a friend of mine 5 years ago, someone who stood in the way of one of his developments. Manufactured evidence, bought testimony, the whole playbook. My friend lost everything, his career, his family, and eventually his life. He couldn't live with the shame of a conviction he didn't deserve. Marcus felt something shift in his understanding. You want revenge. I want accountability, Drake corrected. Revenge implies passion. What I want is cold, calculated, and legally unassailable. I want Franklin West to experience exactly what he inflicted on others. and your investigation is the vehicle to make that happen. So you've been helping us all along, Marcus said slowly. The bail, the connections, all of it was about getting to West. Drake smiled, a thin expression that didn't reach his eyes. I helped you because your friend deserved to be helped. The fact that his salvation coincides with West's destruction is simply elegant efficiency. I don't believe in wasting opportunities. Marcus didn't know whether to be grateful or disturbed. He had been used, they all had, but the using had aligned with their own interests so perfectly that it was hard to resent. The journalist meeting tomorrow, Drake continued. I've made arrangements to ensure its security. West will try to interfere once he learns what's happening, and I intend to make sure he fails. Why tell me this? Marcus asked. Why reveal your involvement now? Because tomorrow everything changes. Drake's voice was serious. When the story breaks, West will know who is responsible. He will come for you, for Jennifer, for everyone involved. I want you to understand that you will not be facing him alone. You have resources behind you that he cannot match. And what do you expect in return? Drake's thin smile returned. That Superbird when you're ready, and the satisfaction of watching a monster meet his end through legitimate means. Nothing more. He turned and walked toward the door, then paused. Mr. Cole, he said without looking back. You made a decision at that gala. A decision to trust someone you barely knew in order to save someone you loved. That decision revealed your character more clearly than any words could have. Remember that in the days ahead. Remember who you are when things get difficult. Then he was gone, leaving Marcus alone with his thoughts and the growing certainty that nothing about this situation was as simple as it appeared. The next morning, Marcus woke to chaos. Jennifer Chen was gone from the motel where they had arranged protection. The room showed signs of a struggle, furniture overturned, a lamp shattered on the floor. But there was no blood, no evidence of violence beyond the struggle itself. And the flash drive with all the documentation was missing. Chains called with the news at 6 a.m, his voice tight with controlled fury. She was taken sometime after midnight, he reported. Our guys were watching the front, but whoever did this came through the back, through a window that should have been nailed shut. West, Marcus said. He knew. He must have been watching her all along, waiting for her to lead him to whoever she was planning to testify with. What do we do now? Chains asked. We find her, Marcus replied, already pulling on his boots. We find her before it's too late. He called Eleanor as he raced to his motorcycle. Jennifer's been taken, he said as soon as she answered. West has her. He heard Eleanor's sharp intake of breath. I'll call my contacts, see if anyone knows anything. And I'm going to West directly, Marcus said. That's exactly what he wants, Eleanor warned. He's baiting you into doing something stupid. Then he'll get exactly what he wants, Marcus replied grimly. But not the way he expects. He ended the call and kicked the motorcycle to life, feeling the engine's roar vibrate through his bones. Somewhere in the city, a frightened woman was being held by a man who would stop at nothing to protect his secrets. And Marcus Cole was going to find her. Even if it meant walking into the lion's den alone. West's corporate headquarters rose from downtown Los Angeles like a monument to ambition, a glass tower that reflected the morning sun in ways that made it look almost beautiful. Marcus pulled his motorcycle to a stop across the street and stared up at its gleaming facade, knowing that somewhere inside, Franklin West was waiting. The front entrance was not an option. Security there would have him in handcuffs before he made it past the metal detectors. But Marcus had spent days learning everything he could about West's operation, and he knew something that security didn't. West had a private elevator, a direct line from the underground parking garage to his penthouse office, accessible only to his inner circle. And Marcus knew someone who had once been part of that circle. He pulled out his phone and dialed a number he had memorized from Jennifer's documents. Raymond, he said when a groggy voice answered. Raymond Foster. You used to be West's head of security before he replaced you with someone willing to cross more lines. I need your help. The silence on the other end stretched long enough that Marcus thought the call had dropped. "Who is this?" Raymond finally asked. "My name is Marcus Cole. I'm with the Thunder Knights. We're trying to bring West down, and he just kidnapped a woman who was going to help us do it. I need to get into that tower, and you're the only person who can tell me how." More silence. Then a heavy sigh. "I heard about your club," Raymond said. "What you've been doing with the community programs, the veteran support. Good work, real good work." "Then help us finish it," Marcus pressed. "Help me save this woman before West makes her disappear." "The elevator still uses the same code," Raymond said. 84221. Gets you from parking level 3 to the executive floor. But you'll be walking into a trap. "I know," Marcus said. "That's what I'm counting on." He memorized the code and ended the call, then guided his motorcycle into the underground garage entrance, blending with the flow of morning commuters arriving for work. Parking level 3 was quiet, reserved for executives who hadn't yet arrived. Marcus found the private elevator tucked in a corner, hidden behind an unmarked door. The keypad glowed softly in the dim light. 84221. The doors slid open with barely a whisper. The ride up was the longest 20 seconds of Marcus's life. He had no weapon, no backup, nothing but the determination that had carried him through every crisis since Victor pulled him from the gutter. He was walking into the den of a man who had already proven he would do anything to protect his empire. But he was also walking in as a man with nothing left to lose. The doors opened onto a space that looked more like a museum than an office. Art lined the walls, sculptures stood on pedestals, everything arranged to project power and taste. And at the far end of the room, behind a desk the size of a small car, sat Franklin West. He was younger than Marcus had expected, mid-40s perhaps, with the kind of handsome face that appeared on magazine covers and political campaign posters. His smile as Marcus emerged from the elevator was warm, welcoming, the smile of a man greeting an old friend. "Mr. Cole," West said, rising from his chair. "I was wondering when you'd arrive. Please have a seat." "Where is Jennifer?" Marcus demanded, not moving from his position. West's smile didn't waver. "Safe. For now. Her continued safety depends entirely on the next few minutes of our conversation." He gestured to a chair across from his desk, and after a moment, Marcus sat. Every instinct screamed that this was wrong, that he was exactly where West wanted him, but there was nothing to be gained by fighting yet. Not until he knew where Jennifer was being held. "You've caused me considerable inconvenience," West continued, settling back into his chair. "That evidence Jennifer stole, the documentation she was planning to share with the press. It's taken significant resources to contain the damage." "You mean it's taken resources to cover up your crimes?" Marcus corrected. West waved a dismissive hand. "Crimes is such an ugly word. I prefer to think of them as investments in efficiency. Victor Reyes was an obstacle to progress. Progress for this city, progress for the communities that will ultimately benefit from my developments. His removal was a necessary step." "His removal," Marcus repeated, feeling cold rage building in his chest. "You framed an innocent man. You tried to destroy everything he'd built." "I tried to clear a path forward," West said patiently, as if explaining something to a slow child. "Reyes had the neighborhood residents organized against my projects. He was costing me millions in delays. From a purely economic perspective, his elimination made sense." Marcus stared at the man across from him, seeing for the first time the true depth of his corruption. This wasn't evil born of passion or ideology. This was evil born of indifference, the complete inability to see other human beings as anything more than variables in a profit equation. "What do you want?" Marcus asked flatly. "I want you to go away," West replied. "You and your club and your crusade for justice. I want the journalist to kill her story. I want Jennifer Chen to suffer an unfortunate accident that prevents her from ever testifying. And I want Harrison Drake to understand that his interference in my affairs has consequences. And if I refuse, then Jennifer dies." West said it casually, like he was discussing the weather. And the evidence I've manufactured against your club, evidence that makes Victor's frame look amateur by comparison, gets delivered to every major news outlet in the country. By tomorrow morning, the Thunder Knights will be labeled a criminal organization, your assets will be seized, and everyone you care about will be in prison. Marcus absorbed this, feeling the trap closing around him. West had planned for every contingency, had anticipated every move they might make. He was playing chess while they were playing checkers. But there was one thing West hadn't anticipated. Marcus smiled. The smile seemed to disturb West more than anger would have. His perfect composure flickered, just for a moment. Something amusing, Mr. Cole? Marcus leaned forward in his chair. You're a businessman, West. A good one, by all accounts. You understand leverage. You understand the importance of knowing everything about your adversaries before you engage them. West's eyes narrowed. What's your point? My point is that you don't know everything about me. You know my record, my history with the club, my relationship with Victor. But you don't know what I did before Victor found me. Marcus let the silence stretch, watching West's discomfort grow. Before I was a mechanic, before I was a biker, I was something else entirely. Something I don't talk about because it doesn't fit the image I've built. But it gave me skills. Skills like recognizing when someone is wearing a wire. Skills like knowing when a conversation is being recorded. He pulled his phone from his pocket and held it up. The recording app was clearly visible on the screen, a timer showing 23 minutes and counting. Every word you've said since I walked in here is documented, Marcus continued. Your confession to framing Victor, your threats against Jennifer, your plans to destroy the club. All of it. Backed up to a cloud server that Eleanor Blackwood's lawyers are monitoring in real time. West's face went pale. That recording is inadmissible, he said quickly. You can't use it in court. I don't need to use it in court, Marcus replied. I just need to give it to the press. The same press that was going to publish Jennifer's story. The same press that's been waiting for something exactly like this ever since your name started appearing in corruption investigations. You're bluffing, West said, but his voice had lost its confidence. Marcus stood up. Jennifer Chen. Where is she? West was silent for a long moment, calculating, weighing options. Marcus could see the exact moment when he realized he had lost. Basement level 2, West finally said. There's a storage facility. She's being held there. Marcus nodded and turned toward the elevator. This isn't over, West called after him. You think you've won, but you haven't. I have resources you can't imagine. This is just the beginning. Marcus paused at the elevator doors and looked back. You're right, he said. This isn't over. It's just starting. And when it's done, when every piece of evidence Jennifer collected is public, when every corrupt official you've bought is exposed, when your empire comes crashing down around you, I want you to remember this moment. I want you to remember that you could have let Victor go. You could have found another way to build your fortune that didn't require destroying innocent lives. But you chose this path, and now you're going to walk it to the end. The elevator doors opened, and Marcus stepped inside. As they closed, he saw West reach for his phone, already making calls, already trying to salvage what could be salvaged. But it was too late. The truth was already out there, spreading through the digital networks that connected Eleanor's journalists, Drake's investigators, and the legal team that had been assembled to bring West to justice. By the time Marcus reached the basement level, his phone was already buzzing with notifications, news alerts about a breaking story involving a prominent Los Angeles developer and widespread corruption. Jennifer was where West had said she would be, bound and gagged in a storage room but otherwise unharmed. Marcus freed her quickly, supporting her weight as they made their way to the parking garage where Chains and a dozen Thunder Knights were waiting, having received Marcus's signal the moment he entered the building. Is it over? Jennifer asked, her voice hoarse from the gag. Not yet, Marcus admitted, but the hard part is done. They emerged into the sunlight to find the parking garage surrounded by news vans and police vehicles. Drake's influence, Marcus realized, making sure that West's security couldn't interfere with their escape. In the weeks that followed, the story unfolded exactly as they had planned. Jennifer's testimony, combined with the evidence she had gathered and the recording Marcus had made, painted a picture of corruption so vast and so thoroughly documented that even West's army of lawyers couldn't contain it. The politician and officials West had paid off scrambled to distance themselves, many of them offering testimony in exchange for reduced charges. The investigation expanded to include multiple law enforcement agencies, uncovering a network of bribery and evidence tampering that went back years. Victor was formally exonerated, all charges dropped, his record cleared. The community he had served celebrated his return with a street festival that lasted 3 days, an outpouring of gratitude for the man who had stood for them when standing cost everything. And Franklin West, the man who had built an empire on the backs of the powerless, watched it all collapse from his prison cell, awaiting trial on charges that would keep him behind bars for the rest of his life. 6 months later, Marcus Cole stood in the driveway of Harrison Drake's estate, watching as a trailer unloaded the 1970 Plymouth Superbird he had spent 4 months restoring. The car was perfect. Not because Marcus had made it look new, but because he had made it look exactly as it had when Drake's father bought it off the lot in 1970. Every detail authentic, every component correct to the original specifications. A time capsule of American muscle at its peak. Drake walked around the car slowly, his thin face unreadable. When he finally spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. "My father would have loved this," he said. He spent his whole life never quite believing he deserved something this beautiful. He died thinking he had failed. "He didn't fail," Marcus replied. "He raised a son who remembered, who honored him. That's not failure." Drake looked up, and for the first time since Marcus had known him, his eyes were wet. "Thank you," Drake said simply. "Not just for the car, for everything." They shook hands, and Marcus felt the weight of something completed, a debt paid, a promise kept. The ride back to Los Angeles took him through neighborhoods that had been transformed in the months since West's arrest. Development had continued, but differently now, with community input and protections for long-term residents. Victor had been instrumental in establishing a new oversight committee, one that ensured progress didn't come at the cost of the people who had built these communities. Marcus pulled his motorcycle into the garage he had called home for years, but it looked different now. The living space above had been expanded, a proper apartment rather than a converted storage area. Eleanor's doing, her way of helping without making him feel like a charity case. He climbed the stairs and found her waiting on the small balcony they had added, looking out over the neighborhood with a glass of wine in her hand. "How did it go?" she asked as he joined her. "Drake cried," Marcus reported. "First time I've ever seen the man show real emotion." "That car meant everything to him," Eleanor said. "His father's legacy, his connection to where he came from. You gave him back something money couldn't buy." Marcus put his arm around her, feeling her lean into him with the easy familiarity they had built over 6 months of learning how to be together. "I've been thinking," he said after a moment. "That sounds dangerous," Eleanor teased. "I've been thinking about what happens next. The garage is doing well, the club is stronger than ever, Victor's programs are expanding, everything we fought for is happening. And I want more." Eleanor turned to look at him, curiosity in her eyes. "Drake mentioned something," Marcus continued, "about setting up a foundation. Not charity exactly, but support for people like Jennifer, whistleblowers who risk everything to expose the truth. Legal protection, financial resources, the kind of backing that could make the difference between someone speaking up and someone staying silent out of fear." "You want to help him build it," Eleanor said, understanding dawning. "I want us to build it," Marcus corrected. "Together. Your connections, my experience, Drake's resources. We could create something real, something that makes a difference." Eleanor was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the city lights beginning to flicker to life in the gathering dusk. "I spent my whole life being careful," she finally said. "Being what my family expected, giving to the right charities, attending the right events. And it never felt like enough. It always felt like performance, like going through the motions of meaning something without actually meaning anything." She turned to face him fully. "This feels different," she continued. "This feels like it matters." "So is that a yes?" Marcus asked. allowing himself to smile. That's a yes, Eleanor confirmed. On one condition. Name it. We do it right. Legal, transparent, accountable. No cutting corners, no gray areas. If we're going to help people who speak truth to power, we have to be able to withstand that same scrutiny ourselves. Agreed, Marcus said. They stood together on the balcony, watching the sun sink below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Somewhere in the distance, the sound of motorcycles rumbled through the streets. Thunder Knights on their evening patrol, protecting the communities that had learned to trust them. Marcus thought about Victor, about chains, about all the brothers who had become family. He thought about Jennifer, who had started fresh in San Francisco with a new job and a new life, free from the fear that had driven her to them. He thought about Drake, sitting in his estate with his father's car finally restored to glory. And he thought about Eleanor, the woman who had seen something in him that he hadn't been able to see in himself. The road that had brought him here had been long and winding, full of detours and dead ends. He had made mistakes, had hurt people, had spent years convinced that he didn't deserve redemption. But that was the thing about redemption, he realized. It wasn't something you earned by being perfect. It was something you built, one choice at a time, by deciding every day to be a little better than you were yesterday, by showing up when people needed you, by fighting for what mattered, by refusing to give up even when giving up would have been easier. Victor had taught him that. And now Marcus would spend the rest of his life teaching it to others. Eleanor's hand found his in the darkness. "What are you thinking about?" she asked softly. "Tomorrow," Marcus replied, "and all the tomorrows after that." She smiled, and he felt its warmth even without seeing it. Sounds like a good place to start. They stayed on the balcony until the stars came out, two people who had found their way through the darkness into something that looked a lot like light. And somewhere across the city, in a community center that had been saved from demolition by a group of bikers and the man who led them, children were learning to fix engines, learning that their past didn't define their future, learning that there was always another chance, always another road, always hope if you were willing to fight for it. The sound of their laughter carried on the evening breeze, mixing with the distant rumble of motorcycles and the soft murmur of a city that was learning to believe in second chances. Because that's what this story was really about. Not bikers or socialites, not million-dollar bail or corrupt developers. It was about the simple truth that had guided Marcus through every challenge, every triumph, every heartbreak. That we are defined not by where we come from, but by where we choose to go. And Marcus Cole had chosen hope. If you watched this far, it's because you felt something real in this story. You understand what it means to fight for family, to stand for what's right even when it costs everything. Leave a comment saying, "I watched this far, so I can get to know you and know who really loves the stories on this channel." And if this story moved you, if it reminded you that loyalty and courage still exist in this world, hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear that message today. Subscribe to this channel for more stories that prove the best of humanity still shows up when it matters most. Because family isn't just who you're born to. Family is who shows up. And the ones who show up are the ones who change everything.